You ever feel like you're ready to move on, but deep down, you know you're still carrying something? You tell yourself you're good, you're over it, you've healed, but you still check who's watching your stories. You still replay old moments in your head. You still catch yourself comparing every new woman to the one who broke you. And that's the part no one wants to admit. So you start dating again. You talk to someone new. You try to get back out there, but something feels off. You're there, but not present. You're trying, but still guarded. You're doing all the right things, but it doesn't feel real. Here's the truth, brother. Most men don't date again because they're ready. They date again because they're restless, lonely, or scared of sitting with their own silence. And if that's where you're at, I'm not judging you, but I'm telling you this as someone who's lived it. Until you fix the things inside you, you're just bringing old pain to a new table. That's why this video exists, because there are 7 things that most men never fix before they start dating again. And mistake number 3, it's the one that sabotages the next connection before it even starts. And most men don't even realize they're doing it. But you're not like most men. You're here because something in you knows it's time to do this right, to rebuild yourself with power, to stop chasing and start leading. So stay with me, my friend. Let's break this down, one shift at a time. 1. You're still chasing validation instead of standing in value. Let's get real, brother. Most men don't start dating again because they're ready. They start because they feel unseen, unwanted, forgotten. And dating becomes a way to fill that emptiness, to prove they still matter, to feel chosen again. So what do? They swipe, they chase, they text too often, they overshare on the first date, they perform instead of lead. And all of it, every single move, is fueled by one hidden need: validation. You want to be liked. You want to be wanted. You want someone to look at you and say, "You're enough." But here's the hard truth. As long as you're dating for validation, you're not dating from power. You're not grounded. You're not leading. You're reacting to the same wound you swore you left behind. And women feel it. They can sense when a man's attention is hungry, not intentional. They feel it in your compliments, your eye contact, your energy. And the moment she senses that you need her attention to feel like a man, she pulls back. Because no woman respects a man who needs her approval to function. Validation is like sugar. It gives you a quick high, then leaves you emptier than before. What you need isn't validation, it's self-certainty. The man who's truly ready to date again, he's not looking for someone to fill the silence. He's not trying to erase his ex. And he damn sure isn't chasing hearts to avoid healing. He stands in his value. He moves with calm. He leads with clarity, not because he's trying to be chosen, but because he already knows who he is. So take a breath, my friend. If you're still chasing attention, chasing affection, chasing connection, stop. Look in the mirror. Ask yourself, if she didn't want me, would I still feel like a man? Because if the answer is no, you're not ready to lead anyone. Not yet. And this leads us to the next truth. Even if you stop chasing, even if you try to stand tall, if your life isn't built around discipline and direction, you'll start molding yourself to fit her world instead of building your own. And the moment you do that, you lose your edge before the first date even begins. Let's talk about that next. Let's talk about why men without structure lose themselves the second they fall for someone, and how to build your masculine foundation before you ever text her. 2. You haven't rebuilt your discipline, direction, or edge. So now you've stopped chasing validation. But here's the problem most men run into next. They're no longer seeking approval, but they still don't know where they're going. And when a man lacks direction, he doesn't lead his life. He drifts. He moves from woman to woman, day to day, app to app, waiting for something outside of him to give him purpose again. And that's dangerous, because when you don't have discipline, you fall for distractions. When you don't have structure, you start building around her. And when you don't have a mission, you make her the mission. That's when you start adjusting your schedule for her, skipping workouts to reply faster, fading your purpose just to keep her attention. And here's the truth, brother. No woman wants to be the center of a man's life who has no center of his own. She might enjoy the attention at first, but eventually she starts to feel it, that you're orbiting her because you have no gravity of your own. And that's when the respect fades. That's when the emotional pull dies. Because a man without purpose becomes a man she manages, not a man she follows. So before you date again, ask yourself the hard questions. Are you physically in control of your body, your energy, your presence? Are you building something, a business, a brand, a purpose, that gives you direction without her needing to exist? Are your mornings structured or scattered? Do you move like a man with a mission, or a man just trying not to be alone? Because if you're not leading yourself, you can't lead her. You'll mold yourself to her schedule, her moods, her emotional waves. And in doing that, you lose your edge before the second date. That edge? It's not about aggression. It's not about dominance. It's about certainty. The man with edge moves like a man who knows where he's going. She can feel it in your pacing, in your priorities, in how quickly you tell her, "I'd love to see you, but this is the time that works best for me." That's power. That's presence. And that's the kind of man she respects. But even with direction, even with discipline, there's still something most men carry that ruins everything: emotional baggage. The wounds they never healed, the heartbreaks they never processed, the moments they swore they were over, but are still controlling how they act, text, trust, and choose. And that's what we're talking about next. Because even if your life looks perfect on the outside, if you're still reacting from pain on the inside, you're not ready to connect. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the pain you buried, and why ignoring it will poison your next relationship before it even starts. 3. You haven't faced your emotional baggage. You just buried it. This is the one most men ignore. They say they're over her. They've moved on. They don't care anymore. But when you bring her name up, their voice tightens. Their energy shifts. Their jaw clenches just enough to give it away. And that's how you know. They didn't heal. They just buried it. Brother, hear me on this. Unprocessed pain doesn't disappear. It waits. It hides behind casual flings, sarcastic jokes, long gym sessions, and cold detachment. But it never leaves. And then, it shows up in the worst moments. You're on a date with someone new, and you flinch when she pulls away emotionally, not because of her, but because of what your ex did 2 years ago. You assume the worst. You sabotage intimacy. You get cold when things feel good, because good once turned into betrayal. And here's the thing most men never admit. It's not the ex that's ruining your love life. It's the echo of who you became in that relationship, and the version of you that never got resolved. You're still defending wounds you swore you don't have. You're still testing women to see if they'll hurt you. You're still emotionally guarded because no one ever taught you how to stay open and strong. That's not weakness. That's unhealed survival mode. But if you don't face it, you will bleed on every woman you try to build with. You'll compare. You'll withhold. You'll punish her for things she didn't do, because someone else broke your sense of trust. And eventually, she'll feel it. Not in your words, but in your nervous system, in your hesitations, in your cold silences, in your inability to fully open. And she'll leave, not because she didn't like you, but because she could feel she was being punished for someone else's sins. So let me ask you, my friend, have you really moved on? Or have you just distracted yourself with the next maybe because you're too afraid to sit with the pain of the last almost? If your answer isn't clear, you've still got work to do. But the fact that you're watching this, the fact that you're still here, still listening, means you're not avoiding anymore. You're facing it. That makes you dangerous, in the best way possible. But now that you've uncovered the wound, you need to understand how it warps what you're attracted to. Because unhealed pain doesn't just make you guarded, it makes you crave the same chaos that broke you. Let's go deeper. Let's talk about why some men keep chasing drama, and why peace feels boring until you finally break the cycle. 4. You're still attracted to chaos because it feels familiar. Now that we've pulled back the curtain on your pain, let's talk about what that pain has trained you to want. Because here's the twisted truth, brother. Unhealed pain doesn't just make you guarded, it distorts what you crave. You're not just avoiding connection, you're addicted to the same emotional chaos that broke you. And the scariest part? You think it's chemistry. You meet someone new. She's unpredictable, distant, hot one minute, cold the next. Your gut feels tight. You feel on edge. But your brain says, she's exciting. No, my friend, that's not excitement. That's familiarity. Because if you grew up around emotional inconsistency, if you dated someone who ran hot and cold, if your last relationship was a cycle of highs and crashes, then your nervous system learned to associate tension with intimacy. So when a calm, present, emotionally secure woman shows up, you tell yourself she's boring. You feel nothing. You pull away. Not because she lacks value, but because she doesn't feel like the chaos you're wired for. This is what we call a trauma bond by pattern. It's when you feel most attracted to the thing that feels like home, even if home was loud, unstable, and full of walking on eggshells. And here's where it gets dangerous. If you haven't rewired your nervous system, you'll keep chasing women who trigger the same cycle. Chase, reward, withdrawal, drama, silence, reconciliation. And each time you'll say, this one's different. But it never is. Until you realize, peace isn't boring. Peace just feels foreign. Until you've sat with it long enough to trust it. You want to be ready to date again? Then you need to stop craving intensity and start respecting emotional stability. That doesn't mean dull. That doesn't mean passive. It means recognizing when your type is actually your trauma. The woman who texts back calmly, who respects your space, who doesn't play games, isn't boring. She's healthy, but you'll only see that if you've healed enough to stop chasing dysfunction that feels like fire. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been more drawn to the one who hurt you than the one who tried to love you? If the answer is yes, your pain is still choosing for you. But here's the shift. Once you see it, you can change it. And that leads us into the next trap. Because even when you start to desire better, most men fall into the next mistake. They confuse preference with standards. They chase what looks good, feels good, excites them on the surface, and they ignore the red flags because they're obsessed with a type. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how most men fall for the wrong women again and again because they've never defined what they actually stand for. 5. You have no standards, just preferences disguised as type. So now you've realized it's not about chemistry, It's about conditioning. But here's the next trap most men fall into. Even when they try to choose better, they're still not choosing right. Why? Because they're not guided by standards. They're guided by preference. And preference can't protect you. She's hot. She's your type. She has that vibe, that energy, that look you've always gone for. And before you know it, you're deep in something that feels electric, but completely unaligned. You ignore the red flags. You make excuses for her behavior. You convince yourself she's just going through something because your eyes are focused on what pulls you in, not what keeps you safe. Let's get clear, brother. Your type is not your standard. Your type might be the woman who looks the part, but your standard is the woman who acts the part when no one's watching, when you're not chasing, when she has the chance to either honor your leadership or challenge it. If you don't have standards, you'll confuse attraction with alignment, and you'll keep calling dysfunction just how she is. Standards are boundaries, non-negotiables, values you live by and protect, even when she's beautiful, even when she says all the right things, even when your body wants it more than your mind trusts it. Because here's what most men do. They build a list of what they want her to look like, instead of a list of what they won't tolerate. She's got to be into fitness. She needs to be feminine. I like women who are independent. Cool. But will you walk away if she's disrespectful? If she doesn't speak to you with peace? If she disrespects your time, your energy, your values? Or will you stay because she's hot? Because you've already invested time? Because you're afraid to start over? That's not leadership. That's self-abandonment. The man with standards moves from alignment, not obsession, not impulse, not loneliness. And women feel that. They feel when you know what you stand for and what you'll walk away from. They respect it, they test it, and if it's real, they either step up or step out. Both are a win. But here's the thing. Even men who do have standards still collapse in one dangerous way. They become afraid to disappoint her, afraid to make her uncomfortable, afraid to set boundaries and be seen as too much. So they soften, they shrink, they bend their edge to stay liked. And the second you do that, she feels it, she doesn't trust it, and the attraction dies quietly. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the mistake most men make. Not before the date, not in the first few weeks, but in the moments where she's looking for leadership, and all she sees is a man trying not to lose her. 6. You're afraid of disappointing her, so you'll abandon yourself. So you've defined your standards. You finally know what you want and what you won't tolerate. But let me ask you something, brother. What happens when she starts testing them? When she pushes your boundaries? When she questions your pace, your tone, your decisions? When she leans in with that subtle pressure that says, if you really care about me, you'll bend a little. Most men break right here, not because they're weak, but because they're afraid to disappoint her, afraid to say no, afraid to lead, afraid to make her uncomfortable, because deep down, they believe her approval is still the prize. So they soften, they mold, they over-explain, they start managing her emotions instead of holding their frame. And the moment you do that, you betray yourself, not in a loud, obvious way, in small, silent ways. You cancel your plans when she's upset. You stay silent when something bothers you. You let her talk over you, walk through you, make little jabs at your character, and you laugh it off like it's not cutting into your core. That's not kindness. That's fear in disguise. And it kills her respect for you, whether she realizes it or not. Because here's what no one tells you. A woman doesn't feel safe with a man she can emotionally dominate. She may love the power, but she'll never trust the man who gives it away just to stay liked. If you're afraid to say, That doesn't work for me. I don't tolerate that. This is how I live, and I won't shrink it for anyone. Then you're not standing in strength. You're negotiating your manhood. And every time you do it, she feels something quietly close. She leans in less. She opens less. And eventually she pulls away. Not because you weren't enough, but because you weren't yourself. Let me say this clearly. If you're walking on eggshells, if you're afraid to say no, if you're tiptoeing around her emotions just to keep her happy, you're not in a relationship. You're in a performance. And eventually, it will break you. Because the man who leads with truth will lose the wrong woman, but the man who bends to keep her will lose himself. So ask yourself, where in your past relationships did you go quiet, just to avoid conflict? Where did you hold back what needed to be said, because you were afraid she'd leave? That's the pattern. And until you break it, you'll keep abandoning yourself just to be chosen. But here's the truth most men never accept. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You need to be respected by yourself. And sometimes, that means being willing to disappoint her. So you don't disappoint the man in the mirror. But that kind of self-respect, it has one final test. Because even if you set boundaries, even if you hold your frame, there's one moment that reveals your true power. Can you walk away? When it's time to leave, can you do it with calm, clarity, and control? Or do you stay, hoping she changes, hoping things get better? That's the final test. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about why your ability to walk away determines everything. 7. You don't know how to walk away clean. This is the final test, and it reveals everything. Because you can say all the right things, set all the boundaries, look like you've got it all together. But when it's time to walk away, can you actually do it? Or do you linger, negotiate, shrink? Do you hold on to potential, hoping she'll change? Do you stay in something misaligned, because the silence of being alone feels heavier than the weight of staying stuck? That's where most men fall. They can speak with strength, but they can't leave with it. Because deep down, they're still afraid. Afraid they won't find better. Afraid they'll be forgotten. Afraid of starting over from scratch. Again. So they stay. They stay in situations where they're no longer respected, where they're overgiving and undervalued, where their standards are constantly tested, but they keep showing up like it's still day one. That's not love, brother. That's emotional dependency. And if you don't know how to leave without begging, over-explaining, or breaking down, you're not dating from power, you're dating from fear. But here's what you need to hear. A woman is never your purpose. She might be a partner, a mirror, a co-leader. But your peace, your direction, your self-respect, that can never be negotiable. Because when you walk away clean, without noise, without anger, without begging, you send a message that echoes in every room you'll ever walk into. I don't stay where I'm not valued. I don't chase peace, I carry it. I'd rather stand alone in truth than stay connected in confusion. And that's the man she respects, even if it ends, even if she doesn't say it, even if she never comes back. Because your ability to walk away clean, that's your final level of masculine power. It says you're no longer afraid to lose her, because you've already done the work to never lose yourself again. So let me ask you, can you let go without making it a war? Can you release someone you love, not because you stopped caring, but because they stopped showing up? That's what makes you rare, not your charm, not your looks, not your game, but your ability to detach with dignity, to grieve without losing direction, to rebuild without resentment. That's real strength, and most men never get there. But you You're not most men. You've made it through this entire journey. You've looked at your own behavior with honesty. You've faced the uncomfortable truths. And now, you're ready to move with presence, not pain. But before you do, let's pull everything together. Let's bring this full circle and make sure the next version of you never repeats the mistakes of the last. Take a breath, brother, because if you made it here, that means you faced what most men run from. You didn't just watch a video. You looked in the mirror. You asked hard questions. You stopped pretending you were ready just because you were lonely. And for that alone, you're already ahead of 90% of men out there. You saw it now. How chasing validation weakens your presence. How living without purpose makes you easier to lose. How unhealed wounds still control your voice, your trust, your energy. How trauma dresses up as attraction, and how it tricks you into choosing the same pain. How preferences without standards leave you vulnerable. How fear of disappointing her will cost you you. And how your greatest power will always be the ability to walk away with peace. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real. Because when a man stops dating to be seen and starts dating to lead, he changes the entire dynamic. He chooses with clarity. He holds his values with calm. He creates emotional safety, not because he's soft, but because he's solid. And the truth is, that kind of man doesn't chase women. He doesn't need to, because his presence does the talking, and his standards do the filtering. So if this spoke to you, if something in your chest said, "Damn, that's me," then don't keep this to yourself. Drop a comment. Let me know which point hit you the hardest. And if you're really about this work, share this with a brother who needs to see it. Because too many men are hurting in silence. Too many are repeating the same cycles, thinking it's just bad luck. But it's not luck. It's unawareness. And now, you're not unaware anymore. Now, you lead.